Hello, lovely dance people, and welcome to David's Dance Podcast. I'm your host, David Evans. This week on the podcast, I have a good friend with me who is a incredible dance artist. She's based up in Newcastle. She's currently working on a new work called Other, which kind of we're excited to unpack a little bit here on the podcast. She is doing a lot of work with Ballet Laurent. Laurent or Laurent? Ballet Laurent?
Laurent.
Ballet Laurent. Oh, so I was
Yeah.
right. Oh,
Yeah, you were right. French.
Should have just gone with it. Trusted my
Should have just
instinct.
gone straight into it.
Yeah. So Ballet Laurent. Yep. We're really just so blessed to have her here, like kicking off the new season of David's Dance Podcast. Welcome to the podcast, Benedicta Valentina Mamuini.
Nailed it. Yay.
Welcome, Benny.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
This is when I wish we had like a studio audience so I could get like a big
and
round
just
of
get
applause. Yeah, because like if I applaud, like it's really sad and lonely. Like if it's just me, especially on like the solo podcasts.
You need to get a sound like off YouTube where people clap.
Yeah. One that's like just really, really obvious, like obviously bad, like kind of 80s
really
sitcom. Yeah, that sounds really good actually. Yeah, so tell me a little bit about, actually, let's start from the top because like the audience needs to get to know you. I'm actually really curious to hear about kind of where your dance journey started. I don't know a lot about this. So tell me a little bit about like why dance and like where it all kind of started for you.
Good question. Why dance? I'm not even sure about why dance. I think it was just it was a fit that happened many moons ago. I kind of found dance at, I think I was 15, 16. I was in sixth form. That was the kind of the first time I kind of had an introduction into dance. Mm-hmm. It was a lunchtime club, and it was the teacher in it. She was doing a routine to Smooth Criminal. So my friend like dragged me along, and I was like, I really don't want to go. So it was me, my best friend now, and my other friend Lorotto. She like literally she dragged me. She's like, you're gonna have fun. Just like get out your head. And then he had Smooth Criminal playing, and I was like, oh, I love this. I was like, this is kind of a bit of me. So I walked in, and then we did this mad routine. Went back the coming weeks, and just like that's how I got into a version of dance, not what I currently do now. It was so much fun, to be honest.
That was great. I love that as like I don't know, out of all the dance origin stories I've heard, that's probably one of my favorite. Just like
Smooth Criminal.
Smooth Criminal at lunchtime, and that's that was your radioactive spider.
Honestly, that is it. But no, after that I kind of, because I wanted to be a midwife. And that's what I wanted to do at sixth form. That's what I wanted to do when I finished school. And then I was like, right, this is clearly something I like doing. It could be a hobby. So I was like, right, let me do this as a subject in sixth form alongside my other subjects. And then it became it was my GCSE subject. I absolutely adored it. I think from the get-go really, of being in and being immersed in this weird contemporary world and like ballet world, like the first time touching the ballet bar was like age 15. I was a bit like, oh God, this is a bit freaky. But I enjoyed every single aspect of it. And I think the moment I realized that was like, okay, this is kind of my journey. I kind of need to do this was when my best friend Lila, she was like, right, I'm doing dance. And I was like, what do you mean you're doing dance? Because she wanted to do physiotherapy. She's like, no, I'm going to sack it off. I want to do dance. And I was like, oh, right, I'm not sure about this one. Kind of gave it a few weeks. I was like kind of pushing the line of like this, you need to enter your like, the statement that you do at uni.
Yeah.
Your personal statement. And then you choose your uni zone back. And I was like, right, I'm cutting it fine here. And then last minute I was like, John is. I want to do dance as well.
Really?
Yeah, honestly.
And that was a conversation you had with Lila?
Yeah, complete conversation. Because like she said it first, and I was like, right, you do you, I'll be fine. And I was just like kidding myself, going to science and hitting every single moment of it, and doing health and social care and all of these things.
And you're like, look at this crazy dreamer, crazy girl over here.
Yeah, like what's she doing?
A few weeks later. Yeah, so I think I'm also gonna do that.
Can I come?
Yeah.
It was honestly, it was a last minute decision. I found an email as well. I found the email that I sent to my tutor going, I think her name is Miss Broadwell. I was like, Miss Broadwell, I've kind of had a life changing decision. I think I want to do dance instead. And the email she sent back was, get into the office at this time and this thing, bring this, and this. And I was like, cool.
Yeah.
Didn't we even have
riddled with disappointment. Like
yeah, she was. She absolutely was. But she was like, she just needed me a personal statement from me. And I was like, quickly wrote one, and then here I was in training. That's where I began my training.
Wow. So it's quite like, that's like a quick turnaround. Sometimes it's nice when you're like introduced to dance kind of late, because I think sometimes, like, I know so many people who were like, oh, I did ballet when I was like 5, and then like I got serious, and then like I was like, I don't want to be yelled at each week. Like this was fun when we like kind of toddled around, but like now not so much. Like I think sometimes the joy can like just be like kind of beaten out of kids at a young age. And there's something nice about coming to dance like when you're a little bit older. Like age is from a motivation point of view, you know yourself a bit more. And so you can have a bit more ownership of it. You're like, oh, this is my thing. It's not just something my parents are like, go do this. So like I don't have to deal with you for a couple hours. It's
also a blessing and a curse, though. I mean, they're also starting a bit later, especially when, like you said, when people like, I know people when I was training, they're like, yeah, I've been doing ballet since I was 6, and I did this, and I did tap and gymnastics. I'm like, well, I started when I was 15, so you kind of feel a bit self-conscious, and it is a massive
there with
like,
your like tight hips and like
literally zero flexibility. Body. It was like, what is a turnout? What is all these terms? It's like literally learning. And it's so stupid as well with ballet, because I speak Lingala and part of Lingala is French, but all of a sudden, like, it was like a new terminology. All of a sudden, the words that I would know in everyday life was just like, what is it?
Yeah.
It's me again? And it was just like, just little tiny things like that. It was just, completely didn't make sense.
I remember that too. Just like, it was good at like Laurent actually, where like, because I was in the lower set and I'd only done ballet for like a year before I went and did it, and like so much of that first 6 months of ballet is just like learning the names and like learning just the class structure, because actually once you kind of learn that and you're like, oh, they repeat like 80% of this every single class is like kind of the same. Like once you like learn the class, like like I felt like I didn't learn ballet, like how to actually dance it. I just learned how to take ballet class for the first 3 months, where that was enough. Like
honestly, try that, but try that for a whole 3 years. I just learned what ballet was for 3 years, never actually did it. It wasn't until after I finished training I was like, oh my god, I can totally make it my style. Duh. But like at that time I was just like, just make sure you get it right. Don't look like an idiot in class, and we've got this. That was like 2 things. Nailed it. But I think it's kind of, I realize it's that question is like, what is dance? Like it's different to so many different people, and sometimes even when I hear the word dance I'm like, ooh, cringe, because it's like it means so much. Like it's become like a lifestyle, something that started off as a hobby. It's just like I literally live and breathe it. And when people used to say that in uni, I'm like, live, breathe, dance. I was like, oh, that's a funny term. And then it isn't until you actually get into it and you're like, oh my God, like I am one of these people. I am literally breathing this thing. I take it home. I take it to sleep. Like, it's me.
But, it's not a good one if you like a lot of like work-life balance.
No, that is out the window. There's no such thing.
Definitely.
Absolutely no such thing.
But I do know what you mean. Like, it's really easy to get like obsessed with dance. If like, I don't know, it does get into your bones, I think, in a certain way. Like now that like lockdown is lifted and I've started taking classes again and like going out and dancing with other people, like that really came home, because there's just only so much like training you can do, like dance stuff by yourself, before like you just lose the motivation. And one of the things about dance I find in particular is like, because like dance is meant to connect us. It has been used like, you know, for so long in like the history of our species as a way to connect to other people, and to like articulate certain ideas around identity and, you know, all, and like our relationships to things that actually, when you remove the human or social element from it, it feels you really feel the gap more than other things, you know, because I found like during lockdown, I started like doing drawing again in the evenings. And as a solo activity, totally fine. I can do that and like,
Yeah, by yourself.
and
Yeah.
yeah, just by myself. But when I dance by myself for too long and like train by myself too long, after a while, it starts to feel lonely because I feel that gap. And it's really only now
Disconnect.
going
Yeah.
back and doing stuff like salsa, I'm like, oh, this is so good, you know? And it's like so much of what makes it so good is like doing with other people, you know, and
Yeah.
like, yeah, just being a part of that vibe, the way it makes us like feel a part of something, I think.
It's one is I avoided dancing during lockdown. I was just like, I just can't go there. Because I've never been one for a solo act. I've always enjoyed that community aspect of it and being with others in the studio. So I kind of avoided it until the very like towards the right at the end. And I was like, okay, let's fall in love with this art form again and rediscover it for myself as well, and not just rely on people to help me enjoy the ride, but like this is me, this is my life, this is my journey. Like, how can we do this as me? Like, it was a proper conversation in the mirror. That was deep.
And so what kind of came out of that? What did you like change? So you're talking about
Um,
how you were like reevaluating your like relationship with dance.
yeah, it was kind of like it was like a conversation and like I had to have with myself and really dig deep because yeah, like the dancers weren't in the studio with other people, they were in with me. And I think what I realized from the end of it was I got to be more true to myself. If I don't feel like moving that day, don't force it. If I feel like moving, I need to move. If I'm not feeling creative that day, don't bog myself down, or like little tiny things that you like. I constantly beat myself up, and I'm looking at other people going, "Oh, how can they do this? How good?" And I think that's what stopped me from being like, it was like a block that was stopping me from getting to the person that I am right now, where I'm like, I'm more real with myself. It is my life. I live and breathe it, but also in life there's breaks, there's the ups, there's the downs, there's the hate, there's the love. So it's like bringing that more life element into the art form. Really, that's what kind of helped me really fall in love with it again and take a different direction of a journey with it, and not hold myself accountable all the time for little tiny things that I can't help. But,
There's definitely like, yeah, I love that. Like it's having a certain amount of self-awareness of like what sort of drives your creativity, particularly because what we do is both like uh well, it requires creativity and it's highly complex both physically and cognitively, and it's like very demanding. And so if you're not up for it, it's it's a real chore in a way that like doing something that's like more straightforward, maybe you could just kind of push through it. Um, yeah, I find particularly with the creative element, and I feel that definitely like as an artist, like as well, like um, something I've been thinking more about. I have to like almost nurture my like motivation engine and like allow space to be inspired. And a little bit like productivity wise, you know, like I am an up and down person, and kind of because of that, I'm trying to learn to accept more that there's periods where I just have peak productivity and creativity, and there's periods where I have like where you're just getting by, you know. Like even last night, I spent like 3 hours like writing a short story that like was like very complete and very fully formed coming out. And it was something like the ideas of it had been sitting with me for a while, but it was just one of those things where I was just in like a peak state of like creativity and productivity. And if I had waited till like next week or even today to write it down, like I know that story would not, the draft would not have come out as good. Yeah. So it's like, yeah. I think you're really onto something there, because there is something about like being able to just be honest about where you're at. And sometimes
Yeah.
like we do like self-flagellate as artists, and it's like,
It's in our bones to
does
do
it
that.
really get you somewhere? I don't know if it does.
No, it doesn't. And I think it's a conversation that a lot of artists, I think, need to have with themselves because it's such a pressured environment as well. Like every day, there's, well, not every day, every year there is graduates of uni, then they're fresh from all over the world. And it like already dance is already a competitive industry. But then
Mm,
when you compare it with the new generation of movers, is crazy. And you look at yourself and you think, I like what I used to do is compare myself. I'm like, I am nowhere near that level, and I've been here a while. And it's like when you start to get in that process, you really start to beat yourself up. And that's why I think a lot of dancers end up getting burned out as well, because it's like they're constantly like, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to do that, and then you end up burning out rather than if you were really realistic with yourselves. Because dance is an emotive thing as well. It's an emotive industry. Like it's based so much on feelings. If you're not feeling it that day, just don't do it. There's no
mm,
point. Like there's something else that could require your attention. You don't need to be in the studio 24/7. But if you're that kind of person, because I know people who are, and that's where they need to be, then do that. But be realistic. Like for me, I think that's why I suffered for quite a long time, because it was just like just dragging myself to do things. And it's like, not for me. It's not my pathway. It wasn't my journey to be on in the first place. It
mm.
wasn't my business to be there as well. And I was just like, gotta do it for the up form.
Yeah, and you
But
end up like training yourself out of love of
mm,
of the of the of the craft, really.
yeah,
Yeah.
completely.
Yeah, that's interesting, definitely. So is that, how do you apply that in like a, I don't know, a more day to day? Like you have, like coming out of lockdown, you have like a lot of new projects in, like you're doing a lot more kind of choreography and like kind of artist driven stuff. How do you take those kind of learnings, and how are you like applying them now versus like how
Mm.
you would have approached creative projects before?
I think I've learned to say no
Yeah.
rather than feel like I have to do it. I've really learned to evaluate. And I think even coming out of lockdown, I got myself into projects when I was just like, I'm doing it again. Here I am, somewhere where my body doesn't want to be, my brain does not want to be,
Mm.
and my eyes do not want to be seeing what I'm seeing right now, but here I am. And I think it took me a couple of months, even coming out of lockdown, to be like, right, next project. If I feel it in my gut's saying, don't do it, don't do it. And it's much harder when you're part of like a company like I am. But then there's little tricks here and there that you can do with yourself. And I think one of the things is trying to, as much as possible, take out the negativity in your personal life, because it seeps in so quickly. And then all of a sudden you
Yeah.
feel it in your bones. You're doing class and you're not in the right mood. That is the worst thing ever. When you're doing something and you're meant to be showing your best self and you just feel like you're letting yourself down. So there's little tiny things here and there that I do, but it depends on what I'm doing. Like the things that I do for when I'm with the company is very different to what I do when I'm freelance, because you have a bit more autonomy over that.
Yeah.
But just telling myself to keep going, but in the right sense. I mean, I bought this ring that I grabbed just before before we start this podcast, and it says keep going, but in the middle it says effing. I won't say the word. But it's just like that was a reminder for myself, because sometimes, as much as I'm saying, like think about your emotions, at the same time, like need to make money, need to do something that's going to keep me
Mm.
like fed creatively as well. So it's just like, as much as I'm saying, of look at feel your emotions, sometimes you've got to be real with yourself as well when you're being a bit of a sissy and being a bit of like, oh, I can't do it. It's like, no, you can. You just feel a
Yeah.
little bit emotionally low. It's like, so there's that level of realness as well. So many layers, like an onion.
I mean, that kind of stuff, like, I mean, it's also just embracing that a lot of that just comes with every job. Like, and I'd rather have a
True.
bad day, like, at dance than
Yeah.
like a bad day at any other job. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
because those are really bad days. When, yeah, yeah. So I definitely get it. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's one of those things where sometimes it does take that perspective of just like being grateful of like this is a
Mm,
hard career, definitely, but um,
hmm.
even when it's tough, it can be a lot better than a lot of other things,
Yeah.
for sure.
100%.
So how did
100
so tell me,
100%.
like, how did you make the the transition, I'm like kind of jumping ahead of here a little bit. But
Go for it.
the main company that you work with is Ballet Laurent,
Yeah.
uh, which is like I was able to actually so the Lost, is it the Lost Stories? What's the new production?
Yeah, the Lost Happy Endings.
The Last Happy Endings. Thank you.
Yeah.
So you're touring that soon?
Yeah, I mean, I'm leaving straight after this podcast to go and
Really?
do the very last tour venue. We've been touring it since just before lockdown, and we got 2 venues in before we went into lockdown.
Oh, wow.
But we've been touring it since, I can't even remember since when.
So this has been like into and out of lockdowns. You've been like squeezing this production in.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's really squeezing it. And the difference is this time round, so I took on the role in the company because it's my like I went from full time, I'm not part time, but I went back into the company to do full time work as maternity cover for the lady who was before me. So I've taken on kind of her role in the show and also parts of her job role within the company, like the core team. So it's been different as well because I did it as one of the core dancers in the company. Like I played a bar, I played Cinderella, like loads of different those kinds of roles, and now it's like a lead role, which is completely massive jump. So I'm getting to experience it on both sides with a very quick fast track as well, which has been absolutely crazy but really exciting.
Oh, that's good. Are you doing
I've kind of forgotten what you said.
So I watched this last night actually. I watched it online because there's a digital version available on like Marquee. So I watched it on there. The show's like for the listeners, the show is like it's amazing. It's a very good show. Like it is like a kids family show, but I enjoyed it loads. The costumes in particular are like incredible. I know this is something that Ballet Laurent does like quite well in general. Like I don't know who your costume people are, but like each production, like the costumes always looked like just incredible, and like and I really enjoyed also just the choreography part of me is always just like really enjoyed how it was like incorporated into the movement as well, without being like kind of clunky or kind of like tokenistic. It felt like really nicely integrated.
It's one of the things with the company because they have so many. Sorry to interrupt. And my connection's going off, so I keep putting in. I really apologize. Keep going in at the wrong time.
That's all right. I still got your audio, so.
Okay, brilliant. I was just saying it's one of the things with the company because they work with so many dancers, and they're all different ages. Like we have dancers from youngest at the minute 21 up until just over 50.
Yeah.
So it's like a vast company of so much knowledge, and each person has their own individuality, and that's why I think it works so well when you're talking about like choreography and stuff like that, because each person brings their own training, their lifestyle, their life stories within what they do. And it's like when I first joined the company as an apprentice, it was so inspiring because I was like, how the hell do you make this work, like in relation to live? Like everyone's so different, but then when they come together, it just makes sense. It's just like, yeah, massively inspiring. And to go on back on your costume, the costume for the Lost Happy Endings have been absolutely crazy. They're done by a wonderful designer, fashion designer called Nasser Mazan. He's done like stuff for like FK Twigs and other like Rihanna and stuff like that. So he's like fashion designer, and then he's entering into like the dance industry. So his collaboration was the first time with Ballet Laurent for this production. So that's why the costumes are like crazy.
So, yeah, the costumes were dope. Yeah, and I think, so I guess if we have quite a few listeners who aren't based in the UK, so if you do want to check it out, do check it out live, but otherwise check it out online because it is definitely worth a watch. Yeah. So how did you come to join Ballet Laurent? How it's like, how did that kind of come about?
It's a weird journey because when I first realized it was like so when I was talking about me starting dance in sixth form, it was only a few years later when I realized that 2 of the Ballet Laurent members came into my sixth form to do a workshop.
Oh wow!
And then they gave us tickets to go and watch the show. But I hadn't had that recollection until we like spoke about a few days later.
Hmm.
And then when I went training in uni, a few of the dancers like Gavin and Debbie, they were like in and around Dance City. So Ballet Laurent were based in Dance City when I was training here. So I would see them on the stairs and stuff like that and say hello kind of thing. And then when it comes to really working with them, it wasn't until my second year when they were R&Ding Rumpelstiltskin, which was one of another like big fairy tale that they did. We kind of had like a couple of days R&D with them when I was in my second year. Yeah. And then my third year, I got approached by Debbie. He was like, right, we're having an audition. And I was like, okay. She's like, we'd like you to come. And I was like, okay, tell me more. And then I went to the audition and then I got the apprenticeship, which was absolutely bonkers.
That's dope.
And then I joined straight after a training. So the kind of R&D that I did in my second year helped me in my apprenticeship, which is like a massive great journey. But yeah, that was 2017 and here I am.
I mean, that's why like having those like opportunities like while you're still studying and doing that networking is like so crucial, you know. And yeah, I remember so much of Laban was just like about just having the opportunity to just be around other dancers, choreographers, just people making, you know, because those are people that I'm like still collaborating with today, and still hitting up, you know. They become like these like kind of little incubation like innovation hubs for dancers, and it's particularly important because the dance industry is based around a lot who you know. You still have to be very, very talented. Part of it I think is like not so good and kind of nepotistic, but there is another side of it which I really do truly understand, which is to do with trust in the artistic process, you know. And it's like, as a like choreographer, I do so much prefer taking someone who still has to be a good dancer, but I'd rather take a B dancer, but like A to work with, than take like an A dancer who's like B to work with, you know, because like, from a process point of view, I need like those dancers who I know are going to be committed to the process and gonna like take it seriously and not just be there in body, but really be there in mind. And it's really only by working with people a little bit and having that contact time that you're able to like kind of judge that, because you know, even in the audition room, like you can see how people dance and move, but it's hard to kind of gauge what people are actually like to work with without working with like, them, you know?
It's completely mad. I think this is why, like, whenever I think about how do other companies do it, like, and it's just like body after body after body, it's just like, I find it so hard because even with, like, you just need to have some version of personality, or you think who you're getting in the audition room is what you get after you employ them. And it's like, it's so different. Like, humans are humans. Like, someone who thought was like this version of a person, you start working with them and you're like, well, it's like red flags all of a sudden. You're just red flag after red flag after red flag. And it's just like, I was wrong, Jared. I made the wrong decision. It's just like, I could not be in that position when you're having to trust someone like that. And it's a scary thing. I mean, I say I couldn't be in that position. I currently am, because with the project earlier, but it's just a scary prospect of being like, I don't know you on a human interaction, soul, friendship level, but here's a job and this is what I need you to do. And please don't mess it up. And please do it. It's like, it's the most terrifying feeling in the world, like handing over your baby and just be like, can you please just look after it? This needs to be brilliant.
And it is really why,
I don't
like,
even know how you manage to.
It is a huge part of why like auditioning is like the hardest way to get work as a dancer, like, because you're like doing it at the time when the role is like most competitive. They're like looking at all these different people, you know, and like, so it's an uphill battle, you know, and it's like first time they're meeting you. So they're skeptical, like, you know, they don't have anything good to go on. And so, you know, and because you're going on this uphill, if you meet people in a non-competitive context, they notice first what works about you. But the problem in an audition room is you're competing against so many other people, is that the first thing that they notice is why you're not suitable for the role. And it's like a cut mentality, because they're like, it's 5 rounds and they're cutting people at each round. And so they're spending most of that time going like cutting people who think are not suitable for the role, even more than looking at people who are there like, this person could do it, you know? So it's like they're there looking at most of your negatives rather than like what you bring to something.
Yeah.
So it's also a little bit, I think, how it's kind of framed. Yeah, auditions are just always kind of brutal. Yeah, definitely.
They are, and I'm like, but is there a better way? Like, could they be better somehow? But I don't think they could be better. Like, it's to happen, but at the same time, it's like
I do quite like that R&D
for
model.
a human to human kind of.
Like, I think, you know, even like what you did with Ballet Laurent in second year, the like R&D style audition where you bring external people into the process is a really great thing. Because like, even if dancers, like, it's great for the choreographer because they get a lot of dancers to try stuff out on anyway, which, like, if you're that kind of choreographer, is helpful anyhow. And you get to know people in a more comfortable setting and over a few days, so it's not as stressful. But I also think for dancers, it's great because you actually get experience working with other people, working with dancers. You get company experience of doing an R&D that you could put on your CV anyway, of like, I've done this R&D. I wasn't paid for it, but at least I've done it. And like, it's a positive, and it's more relaxed. Whenever I've done those types of things, I was just always so much more at ease than when you do these things and like, you know, you're like, I could be cut and be going home any minute. And so like, that's not exactly a relaxing environment to do your best dancing. And that was how I met Ella, was like, her first audition was, she ran it like that it was an open R&D people could come to, but she was like, also, I am auditioning people for roles as a part of it. And there were people there who were just there to do the R&D, and then there was others who were like, yeah, I want to also, like, I'm also doing the application and stuff. Yeah, and obviously it worked out because I ended up working with Ella a lot. But yeah, I mean, I contrast that with a lot of very negative auditioning experiences that I've had. I think if I end up doing like more, if I did bigger projects, I think that's probably how I go about it, because it's just so much nicer for everybody. Yeah, and from like a learning point of view, one of the things that I kind of struggle with is, this is one of the ways in which dance prices people out of the profession, is that both it's expensive from like doing it as a higher education. It's expensive to learn because it's a high risk, low earning career, and it's like just as expensive as other degrees. And then when you do it and you graduate, like, your dance classes are like often very expensive, you know. And the irony is that, like, as a dancer, if you're freelancing or you're not working yet, is that you can barely afford to take class. And so like, you kind of need affordable ways to like stay taking class at the professional level, you know. And you know, I found like a mixture of things. There are, you know, great institutions out there that offer free or very affordable professional class, but that's definitely not the case for everybody. And it's one of those things that, like, when you come out of uni, I think a lot of people drop out basically because they can't, they can barely afford to do dance as a hobby, let alone like as to do it enough to maintain, or let alone get better at their dancing.
I know. Like, I find for something that's meant to be inclusive, it can also, like, it comes at such a price. Like, imagine if you've been doing classes since you were like a little, like 6 or something, and then you've continued it into your adult life. That is a lot of money being pumped into this industry, and it's like to what is the effect of this?
And it is a big part of why, from like a personal point of view,
it's a crazy
big believer in like companies marketing their classes keeping high prices for non-professional dancers and offering like free or very affordable like workshop options, because I think it is a shame when I see like professional companies that offer loads of like very expensive like professional like workshops and and what you know, and then the people at their shows are just professional dancers or people very interested in dance. And so it basically is like, well, this is like a pyramid scheme, because you're like relying on the people trying to get into the company to like support the company. You know, whereas you need people beyond
company,
dance, you know, new audiences, you know, which is something like Ballet Laurent does really well, is bringing in like the community, different ages, like people not introduced or particularly well versed in dance to come and watch it, so that actually not only does that like make it more relatable, but it also offloads all this pressure on like the professional dancers to like almost be funding like their own opportunities.
Yeah, 100%. And they're really grateful. Like you could send them an email, be like, listen, like I'm up. Can I do a class? Or even with like students in the Northeast who contact them and be like, I'm graduating this. Can I come have a look in the class, or can I do a company class with the company? Can I watch rehearsals? Of like, they're really great for that, because they're literally they cater to from children up older to like the elderly and professionals and onwards. It's just like it's an all-rounded kind of company, which is why it's brilliant. I mean, in Newcastle, anyways, there's a lot of companies that do that. And I think that's the difference with Newcastle. The places like we get free pro class, we can book space, like a week in advance, and it's completely free. Like there's loads of different perks to be living in Newcastle, but it also comes with its different disadvantages as well. Because I just don't know, for some reason we just don't get everyone else coming down. It's just like it's a thing that I think people are figuring out. But the dance scene here is very small, and which is brilliant as well, because you can have that conversation with people. You can get to know people on a different level. I don't think you could do in other places, let's say London or Manchester or wherever you are. So
I think probably like Newcastle is actually probably a great place to start a career in dance, because you have a lot of that small network, like you say, but also the like abundance of free pro class. Like you don't have the rent, like the class prices or like the rent prices that you have in like London. Like, you know, yeah, because the difficulty is like being in, you know, when you're in London and stuff, yes, there's like maybe more opportunities there, but it's so expensive to like live, be there and whatever, that like it's really hard to almost like get going and kind of keep that momentum. Yeah, so I mean, and I'm glad that there are these regional hubs where like things are happening, and that it is community based and based in the community, particularly because I think we sometimes forget as pro dancers that this idea of dance as a profession is like kind of like historically speaking like really really new idea. Like for the vast majority of like human history, dance has always been a like non has been a very non-professional communal thing. And we've only really recently started to go with like dance and music to be like outsourcing it to like like professionals, where we're like, oh, they're the ones that do it and do it at a high level, and they do it for us as a service, you know. And you know, as like a professional dancer, like I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to be able to like earn money doing that. But at the same time, I think there's going back to like a more community-based model is almost going back to like the kind of roots of dance in general.
Roots, 100%. Yeah, 100%. Because everyone's got it in their bones to move like that. And I think just one of the gorgeous things is that whenever I see non-dancers on stage, because it's like, oh, even with there's all these dancers on stage dancing in unison, and it's just like, no, we're all born with our own uniqueness in movement, and that's why sometimes training can be a bit like, oh, because it almost gets taken out of you. Then you have to rediscover it because all of a sudden everyone wants individuality when you leave uni. It's like, what? We weren't told that.
Yeah, just spent like 3-4 years training it out of you, and then suddenly they're like, so what makes you different? Yeah, that's definitely true. With the bit of time that we have left, like I want to talk about, yeah, sorry, we've really jumped all over the place, but it's good. It's good. I love it.
What makes you you? Can you move like this?
And what makes you you? Oh. I want to talk a little bit about your new work. Yeah, your new work, Other. Tell us a little bit about that. Give us like the elevator pitch, like what's it about? What is it? Who are you making it with, etc.
So if you've been tuning in from this podcast from the very beginning, I mentioned Lila, who's been my best friend since we were like long time ago. So we've kind of went on a weird creative journey together. We started off deciding we both wanted to do dance, and then we both kind of did it at uni, and then we both went separate ways in terms of career paths. I went down apprenticeship route. She went down to Chichester and did the MA. And since she came back to Newcastle, we've kind of worked on little teaching projects here and there, got some funding parts, made films. But then this is kind of our first project together, and it kind of came about during lockdown. We were just like discussing, like, right, we really want to work together creatively. What can we do? How can we make this happen? And then we brainstormed for a bit, and then we were like, right, this is not getting anywhere. And then we just started chatting, just as we do, just nattering on and just kind of just talking about life. And this is something I really value Lila for, because she's one of these people that I can have real conversations with, real deep conversations with. And then this is how the project came about. We started talking about our cultural upbringing, just how we were up when we were younger, the things that we experienced. Then we were like, oh wait, there's some recurring themes happening here. And then that's how the project was born. We kind of press record on our phone, and then we just talked about loads of different things that irk us, frustrate us, make us laugh, give us joy, like loads of different things. And we're like, right, this is a project. There is a project here somewhere. And from that's what we went into, and we wrote an arts council bid. Well, actually, first we applied to Dance City, and then we got a bursary from Dance City. And then we applied to Arts Council, and then we got the funding, and then we decided to call the project Other, for everyone who's ever felt othered or ever felt different. But also we realize it's a shared experience as well, but it's not something people talk about. So it's motivated by our own personal culture upbringing, but it can relate to anyone who's been in that kind of place, whether an immigrant, a refugee, or someone who's moved from Scotland to Newcastle. Like, they'll experience some level of displacement. So that's kind of what the project is about. And then within that, we're doing loads of things that we wrote down on paper and tried to actualize. Such as, like, we're hoping to do a podcast. We're hoping to create a film, which is based on one of our memories of growing up, where it both happened in Morrison's. So Lila was in Morrison's, and she was walking in Morrison's barefoot because she grew up homeschooled, and she was walking in Morrison's barefoot, like she always did in her life. And then one woman had a go at her mum, and then a kind of situation arose there. And then another experience was when I was growing up. When I first came to Newcastle, my mum would take us all to go shopping. She'd pack all the kids up and, right, we're going shopping, we need food. And one thing she would do is she would carry things on her head, did those massive bottles of water, she'd carry one on her head, or she'd carry the shopping bag on her head, like just little tiny things. And I remember the looks that she would get and people whispering and stuff. So that's kind of what the film is going to be based on. And then on top of that, we're also doing engagement workshops, because, like we said, like we both really have a passion for teaching the younger generations. And so this is something that we really wanted to do. We're doing engagement workshops with communities in and around the Northeast, with children who live in slightly lower socioeconomic areas. And we're really excited about that. That's kind of the part we're really, really, really excited about. And then lastly, because I've babbled on for quite a bit, we are doing a R&D. So it is R&D stage to create a duet. So it's kind of autobiographical duet based on some of the themes that we discussed, such as like bilingual, which was just a big conversation within itself. Like, being bilingual is mad, absolute madness. And then some things like food, like dress sense. It's just loads of different things that we kind of came up from when we're having this conversation. So we're going to be in Leeds towards January and February creating this first stage duet together, and we've got amazing help and our completely amazing creative team, which I'm really, really excited for, to help us do this. And then we finish in
awesome.
March.
So it sounds kind of like I like this idea that it's like an ecosystem of artistic projects like based around this like core themes. Really this initial conversation that has these like different elements to like support the idea. Particularly when you have like themes that are like kind of like personal and as like deep as this and rich, like it can really help to, it helps like offload some of the artistic pressure by having to do it all in one medium. Like when you can kind of accomplish like little bits of it and unpack that subject through a few different like
lenses,
a few different lenses, a few different mediums, like it can actually it offloads the pressure of like, oh, I need to communicate all of these feelings like in a dance work, for instance. So I know you haven't really gone, so it sounds like you haven't really gone to studio that much, but like from a like artistic point of view, like how do you start to take ideas like these conversations and start to turn them into movement?
I think this is what we're going to discover, or on a journey to discover. It's really mad. Like we used one of the recorded conversations that we did, and we performed like an excerpt of, it's like a loose improvisation. We were in the studio for a couple of days and using kind of our monologue to create some form of movement on stage. And I think we were really like, this is an
like
experiment.
To the monologue, you mean, like using it as like almost like a soundtrack?
Yeah, we used it as a soundtrack, which is not great having to listen to your voice that many times. But we felt like the things that we've discussed were really, really poignant. And when we realized we'd got it right is on the day of the sharing and the reaction we had from the audience. Like there was chuckles, there were little gasps, there was just like, and then also the response we got after the show when people would come up to us and really, really invested and interested in knowing more about this. And that's when we're like, right, we're doing something right. And our movement is hitting the mark, because we also had professionals there who were within the dance industry, and we had people who have just loved to come in to see any sort of form of movement who are giving us feedback. And we were like, right, we're on the mark, we're hitting it creatively, we're hitting, like we work as a team on stage. My movement with Lila's movement works on stage. We're on the right themes. Like, it was kind of like this is meant to be happening moment. I think to kind of answer your question more, we'll sort of see what happens when we get into the studio. It's kind of a weird thing to try and research because it's so personal. And I think it's one of these projects where it's just such a blessing to just really unpack your life and really try and find things that resonate with other people. One of the other things that I forgot to say we're doing is we're interviewing our mums. So mine and Lila's mum, we're having an interview with them as well, because they're such figures that really, really important figures in our lives. Our mothers, like my mum came here as an immigrant and like made a life for herself and like settled us into this life kind of thing. And Lila's mum, who also like Japanese is like, she was from Japan, like she came to this country and then brought up kids and decided to do it different because she decided to homeschool her kids and then bring them up in a bungalow in the countryside somewhere. So these are really strong women who've decided like, I'm standing in my power, I'm going to raise my kids this way and we'll see what happens. So I think they will definitely help us kind of pull out the roots of who we are as people, which hopefully will translate into movement. But like I said, we're getting direction from dramaturge like Gavin and Debbie from Ballet Laurent are helping us as dramaturge on the project.
Oh, that's super.
They're really, really brilliant at that kind of stuff. So I'm really looking forward to that. And we're also getting help from one of the Ailey sisters. So either Christina or Sade. We're trying to figure out who at the minute. But they'll be helping us with our kind of duet and movement direction work. So it's like we've got the right balance of like themes and heritage and culture and professionalism and dance and teams. And like there's so many layers to this project. It's exciting and terrifying at the same time. But
it's one of those things like that moment, like you talked about, like sharing with others for the first time. That moment's always so nice when you feel like you've been in an artistic process for a while and it feels very personal to you. And you're like, am I just like a crazy person, like, in my room? Is it like that moment from Beautiful Mind where there's just like all the pictures on the wall and lots of like connections and lines drawn?
Yeah.
You're like, am I crazy? Am I just like, making this for me? And people are going to be like, all right, this person's a wackadoodle,
What?
and then you present it.
Bizarre.
And then actually people are like, oh, that actually really resonated with me. And actually the fact that it was so personal gave it a specificity that made it feel really real and authentic. And actually that is the fact that it was so personal makes it like more relatable. Yeah. So
because even at the beginning of this conversation, you were talking about some of your cultural like things that you were saying, like words that you said that you thought meant something like the moment we started this project, we were literally having conversation with people. We're like, whoa, this is something like we realized we're on the right pathway when we're literally just having a conversation with someone, and then we're like, right, that's it. Okay, that's also it. And it's like it's mad because it's an everyday thing for people who are like me and you and others. But it's like it's not something that's discussed on an open level. It's not something that's being made aware of. And I feel like I know we're at this stage in our life in an industry in the world now where everything's like, we need to make you aware of this thing, please. But it's like it's not on that sort of level. But it's just something to help others who feel some sort of way about being new somewhere and not being unknown and feeling displaced. And I think it's just a project to say, hey, this is what we feel like, this is what's going on in our brains right now. So when I say things in a certain word and I say the wrong thing, it's not me. I'm just trying to figure out how we do things here. Like it's that kind of level of communication rather than like, we must be heard, we're suffering, which is that level to it as well. But there's a balance, there's a softness towards this project as well. And I think that's what I love.
I think your title, like you said, that title of Other works really well. Because it is such a personal project, but I think you talked about that, like people relating to that sense of like feeling other and like, and I'm hearing everything what you're saying as like also an immigrant and like a child of an immigrant and like someone who's moved around like a lot of different cultures and like having those things where like culturally you're just like, oh, I'm like this is not jiving like what's happening right now. Like I am just like out of the loop in this moment, or I'm, I feel like I'm like Mulan on the outside looking in,
Look at it.
Yeah, exactly. I want to be where the people are. Yeah, exactly. But one of the interesting thing is like when I talk to people who didn't grow up like that, people who have grown up like, like white kids who grew up like in England, like in the same town, like the whole lives, and you talk to them and they're just like, yeah, I just feel like I don't belong. And like when I see someone, I see people who've had a lot of like consistency in their life, but for whatever reason, they can sometimes just still feel like just out of place. And sometimes that's just a part of being human. Sometimes we all just feel like a bit out of place. And so, I think the fact that you've hit on a theme there that has a lot of like personal history that you can bring into it is great creatively, but hopefully it's going to really resonate with audiences.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Definitely what you just said there is just kind of hit the nail on the head as well. It's just not about a specific type of person, a specific looking kind of person. I think we hit this kind of wall as well when we were doing our project, when we were putting our call outs and stuff, because we were using the term mixed cultured and mixed heritage because that's what me and Lila are, with one or the other.
Right.
And people were like, well, what do you mean? And it's like, we had to break it down. We had so many questions like, but am I mixed cultured or mixed heritage? It's like, well, I can't tell you. This is what this term means. It's like, and it's just like, it's so weird how society wants to put you in these things. And it's like, even something as simple as a very plain description, definition of something, some people still couldn't figure out do I belong in this category or do I not belong in this category? And it's just like, it's just kind of also kind of feeds back into like the whole project as a whole. It's like, there isn't really, it's literally, that's what we said as well. Like, mixed culture, mixed heritage isn't something that you can tick on a box. It's not a tick box. And that's why we specifically said other, because in the title it's a box with a tick in it and it says other. It's like, it's kind of playing on the fact that we don't all belong in boxes. We're just humans, just floating around doing things.
Exactly. Just floating around. That is beautiful, Benny. Thank you for joining me today on the podcast. I'm super excited to see how the project like turns out, and I can't wait to see more like from this R&D. Where can people follow you, follow this project, etc.?
So we've been told off by a digital officer because we don't actually have a specific project Instagram. But you can find the project details either on mine or Lila's Instagram, and I'm sure David will link it below. But we'll be posting kind of similar content. Can't even speak right now. But so that's where you'll find any information about the project, anything that we've got coming up. Otherwise, you can catch me on tour some point, either next year in Theatre Royal if you're Newcastle-based, or in Sadler's Wells in London.
Watch this space. All right.
Watch it.
Thank you, Benny, and thank you, lovely dance people, for tuning in. And we'll be dropping podcasts about once a month now. So hit the subscribe button, hit the like, so you can find out when a new one comes in. Woo! All right. Thanks, guys. See you next week.
Thank you for having me.